Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hey all, it's Friday, January 22nd, and welcome to the end of the week. I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devin O'Reilly.
And this is your Daily Detroit. Look, let's just get into what to know and where to go around town. There's a lot to do. All right, first up, Devin, indoor dining is resuming in Michigan as some restrictions are being lifted. Before I get your thoughts, I want to outline the basics of the announcement Friday morning from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Indoor dining in Michigan resumes on Monday, February 1st with 25% capacity, up to 100 people in an establishment. There's also a curfew from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., so no indoor dining during that time. Outdoor tents with 4 sides are permitted under these same rules, which is a little different. I know that there have been a lot of tents with 1 wall, 2 walls, that kind of thing. Also allowed will be concessions at casinos, movie theaters, and stadiums, personal services requiring mask removal, and non-residential gatherings of up to 10 people from 2 households. Plus, as of January 22nd, stadiums can allow up to 500 people at venues that seat over 10,000 people, and stadiums that seat less than 10,000 are allowed to be at 20% capacity, up to 250 people. The goal behind this one, I know there's a lot of numbers, is to allow for additional attendance at high school football finals that will be hosted this very weekend. This new order will last 3 weeks until Sunday, February 21st. This is all on the heels that state officials are saying that the pause has worked. Positivity rates and cases per 100,000 people are significantly down in Michigan. That test rate is now below 7%. And in fact, COVID Act Now shows we're no longer in outbreak status, which, Devin, that's great news.
Yeah, it's fantastic news. The numbers are looking really good in terms of where we've come since the pause. So like you said, all those metrics, all those levers are way down. I personally think it's a good idea to do what we're doing and to now get to this phase where we can start to open up the restaurants and bars.
But I've talked to a number of owners in the last few months, and a lot of them I don't think are going to be happy with this 25% number.
No, the 25% was tough. I think most people were hoping for the 50% capacity that we had seen previously. The 25%, it seems like there's an inflection point there that a lot of bars and restaurant owners feel like that's just not enough to sustain the revenue that they're going to need to justify staying open. So that's going to be a problem. However, this caveat with the tents that I believe is kind of a new wrinkle, permitting 4-sided tents under the same rules, is kind of another way to kind of put yourself in a gray area where you could add some capacity to your establishment.
I feel like, though, throughout this entire thing, and I guess I understand why, but I also don't, I feel like our instructions have been shifting and changing, and it's really hard for the general public to follow along.
It really is, and then it really just puts the onus on the business owners to understand all the different rules and regulations as well, and then make sure that they're following those and their patrons are following them as well. I think, the biggest thing from a patron standpoint that we need to know is just nothing changes. Wear your masks upon entering up until you're seated. Make sure your table and yourself are 6 feet apart from anyone else. Don't try and make reservations for 10, 12, 15 people, 6 or less people in your party. Stick to that. I think it makes sense. And you'll be able to have some seating indoors, but don't be surprised if you're also offered some outdoor seating in a tent. So from a patron's perspective, that's, I think, the basics you'll need to know, and you'll still need to give your contact information for contact tracing.
Well, and let's be honest, there's a lot of people who are just not going to do this. I know for me personally, I'm not going to go shame anybody else, but for me personally, I'm not going to do indoor dining. I don't feel comfortable doing it, especially if we're at a 25% level. And from what I know from so many doctors that I've talked to, that indoor spread, like indoor without masks, that's how this spreads the best. And I still personally have a lot of reservations, no pun intended, about it.
Yeah, and we completely understand. I sit with you on most of it, but I'm someone who's always just followed what the rules are, and if this is what's allowed, as someone who loves to go to restaurants and patronize places, I'm going to take advantage of the new rules, the new guidelines, follow them to the letter, but also take advantage of the fact that I can go indoors a little bit now and be safe. But of course, you assume more risk, and I totally understand some people are not going to want to assume that additional risk. I just hope that they still continue to do carry-outs, curbsides. Don't stop giving your dollars to the businesses, even if you're not going to go inside.
I will say, though, I think this just reinforces how important a vaccination program is, because when I get that vaccine, my choices are going to be a little bit different. A lot of people I know, their choices are going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the vaccine is going to change everything. And that's an understatement, of course. But the more people we see getting it, if you're vaccinated, you're going to feel. I mean, you're not going to be impervious, But that's not going to happen for everybody for a very long time. So it's going to just depend on a very, very much a personal decision about what you're willing to do and what a level of risk you're willing to assume.
For sure. Well, let's talk about those vaccinations really quick. There was an update in the city of Detroit on Thursday from the mayor saying that if you live or work in the city of Detroit, ages 68 and up instead of 70 can now get vaccinated, plus clergy and funeral home workers. This adds to teachers, childcare workers, postal workers, city employees, and law enforcement, as well as bus drivers, transit, all that kind of stuff. The city has a new dashboard that says that so far, nearly 9,000 doses have been administered as of this recording, and the city has received nearly 11,000 doses to use. So they're using more than 80% of their doses. They're turning and burning them, getting them out the door, which I think is exactly what we need to do. We don't need these vaccines sitting around.
No, absolutely not. Get them into arms, really, no matter what. You don't want to be spoiling or wasting any of these vaccines. And I really do feel confident in the mayor and the administration in Detroit. They have a really structured plan. They're doing it the right way, and they've been successful thus far. They seem like they have a good plan forward to get all the right people vaccinated, even lowering the age, as you mentioned, to 68. All of those essential workers. It's really going to make a difference in our numbers, especially when you're taking care of the people who are most prone to being exposed to COVID first. It'll be very helpful.
Well, all spots are full on this next thing I'm going to talk about, but I'm going to put a link for future signups. It's important to mention this. I get a lot of questions about the suburbs. I think we might even build a resource on dailydetroit.com to kind of figure out okay, where are you and where can you get vaccinations, and have a direct link to that. But up in Oakland County, they're moving vaccines out very quickly as well. And there will be more than 100 Oakland County Health Division employees giving out Moderna vaccines by appointment to about 3,000 residents this Saturday at the Suburban Collection Showplace in Novi, and that is one of their hub sites. It's good to see that Oakland County is making a lot of moves with these vaccines. The county executive, Dave Coulter, has been very vocal in the past about getting more vaccines because they're getting them distributed. As we both said, the more the better. Here in the city of Detroit, it looks like the property values for residents as a whole went up for the fourth straight year, up 8% in just 1 year. That is a huge jump. It's important to note that due to the Michigan Constitution, property tax increases are capped to inflation. So residents are only going to see property tax jumps of about 2%. So there's a lot of additional value being created in the city of Detroit. And what's key, and there is a map that the city shared, which I will link to on the show notes, is that 189 out of 194 neighborhoods saw value increase, including places like East English Village, the North End, and some on the West Side too.
Yeah, this is great news. I mean, this is really at the crux of what Mayor Duggan talks about in terms of creating a better, more sustainable Detroit, increasing home values. I mean, that is a huge, huge indicator of the growth of an area and the success of an area. And, that means that, there's going to be opportunities for more investment that hopefully creates more wealth for the owners of those homes, that hopefully also creates an opportunity where, in previous years, people who had been buying in these previously distressed areas, undervalued areas, would have hard time getting comps and being able to buy a house because the numbers were just thrown off by the extremely low housing values. So this is definitely positive news.
Well, and 7 of the neighborhoods increased by more than 15%. And we're not talking about downtown Detroit. We're talking about the outer reaches neighborhoods, some of those that are, say, on the border with Grosse Pointe. That area did really well.
Yeah, East English Village it's a fantastic neighborhood. I think Curb used to do the neighborhood awards for best neighborhood. They would do like a bracket style, and East English Village I think they won the last 2 years they did it. So that's a fantastic area. It's not just Midtown. It's not just these places that are getting the $500,000 homes in Boston Edison. It's some of these smaller pocket neighborhoods that are really tight communities and have really gotten some good investment just on grassroots level in the past few years, both from the city and blight reduction and from people coming in who are buying the homes, taking good care of the homes, not just trying to flip the homes. It's been really nice to see.
Devin, you're a business nerd, so I think you might appreciate this one. Now, in 2019, the city's residential properties gained $400 million in value compared to the year before. And get this, in 2020, they grew by over $775 million. And that means the gain over the last 2 years is more than $1 billion in residential value in the city. I don't think a lot of people thought that number would happen. I know that there's a lot of online commenters and others for years. I remember even back when I used to work with the Detroit Regional News Hub, for years, Detroit's always been a punching bag for certain sectors of the internet. And the facts are on the ground, and that property values are going up.
That is a good sign on its face. And you just hope if everything works the way things should work, those increasing values should increase the money in the city's budget to be able to put back into city services and amenities and things for the neighborhood and residents of the city of Detroit. So you hope that is cyclical, and those rising values of homes create more tax dollars, create more economic opportunity for the residents, and get put back into the city.
Well, and Moody's and Standard & Poor's have kind of stabilize the city's bond ratings. They're still technically junk, but it's the highest level of junk. And I know it sounds bad at first, but municipal bond ratings, it's more of a guaranteed thing. The fact that the city's been able to keep their ratings kind of steady, and the newest news is that there was a slight upgrade to keep it steady, that is good. And it's also important as the city goes to market for $175 million for demolishing and rehabbing houses. And that's going to be part of Proposal N that overwhelmingly was approved by voters in November. That was one where a lot of critics came out and said, maybe it's not a great idea, but city residents came out in force for Proposal N.
It was only a controversial proposal in that everybody agreed it's something that needed to be addressed, but I know there was some pushback on how the money was being used. Was it really being maximized in terms of the value of the money? Was it being tied up with other bureaucratic expenditures and things like that? But by and large, I think most people, especially residents of the city who kind of see this every day, seem to agree that this initiative that the administration has taken on in terms of reducing blight at massive levels is something that should continue.
This place has been kicked, it's been battered, it's been bruised, and I can sit up here and give you coach speak all day long. That none of that matters, and you guys don't want to hear it anyway. You've had enough of that shit, so excuse my language. We're going to kick you in the teeth, all right? And when you punch us back, we're going to smile at you, and when you knock us down, we're going to get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down. And when we do, we're going to take another hunk out of you. Before long, we're going to be the last one standing. All right, that's going to be the mentality.
All right, that's the voice of the new head coach of the Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell, and it's a bit different, Devin, than what we're used to in press conferences. So I wanted to play it. Normally we talk to Fletcher Sharp about this, and we will next week. I wanted to play this one now because it's fresh off the Twitter ticker.
One pride, for sure. One pride. He definitely has passion for this. It's going to be interesting to see. He's a hungry coach, for sure. He obviously has never been a head coach before. He came from the New Orleans Saints, where he's coaching the tight ends and an assistant there. So this is his first shot at being a head coach, and you can tell he definitely has a passion and a desire for the job. He's played before. He's played on the Lions before. He's definitely someone who brought a lot of passion, a lot of energy to that press conference.
Well, we'll talk a lot more about it with Fletcher Sharp early next week. All right, Devin, on to food, which I know we all love to talk about. Unfortunately, the first piece of news I need to share is that Dilla's Donuts is leaving downtown Detroit. This is a report by Eater, which I'm going to link to in the show notes, some friends of the pod. It's sad to see this place go. It was in a neat little corner over by the Detroit Athletic Club and the Opera House. But as is so often when you're talking about a place downtown and then doubled by the pandemic, location is everything. And I feel like a place that's a morning donut shop that's kind of off the beaten path, and then you add in the pandemic slowness, I'm not sure how anyone could make it through that.
It is a tough spot. So I think, Jarrett, was a combination of where it was and then also the pandemic, I think, unfortunately just finished it off because there was no traffic. The traffic that they did get in that area, which I would walk by once in a while and I'd try and grab a donut when I could, but it would have to be going between meetings, going between something along Madison Street there and walking back into the central business district. It was just a little bit out of the way for the daily traffic to really sustain a donut shop there.
Well, and you add in the pandemic, but there is a hard truth I think a lot of folks need to realize is that a lot of those office employees, For the most part, they're not going to travel very far out of their building to go try anything. They really need to be convinced and told about it in order for them to experience the city more than a block or two, because a lot of them are chained to their cubicle.
Yeah, they're chained to their cubicle, and when they do have an opportunity to leave, they're going to find whatever's closest to them. And so if they can get donuts, a good anecdote would be if you're working in the central business district there at a Quicken or Meridian or a Bedrock and you want to grab a donut, well, you can just go down to Roasting Plant and grab a donut. And that's much more convenient than walking the extra 10 to 15 minutes to Dilla's, even though the product may be better there.
Well, and to be clear, they're going to try to keep on going in another form. We just don't know what that form will look like. In other news downtown, we've got a new one opening up. Devin, you kind of have the scoop on this one.
Yes, my good buddy Tarun Kajapeta opened up Coffee Down Under. So I know you got a chance to check it out. I got a chance to check it out. Again, we're talking about kind of the business district. This is what is often termed the financial district of Detroit over on Congress and Shelby. A lot of office buildings, a lot of lawyers, a lot of banks, a lot of things like that, which means it's usually very busy during the Monday through Friday 8 to 5 times, and usually very quiet on weekends and later at night.
And I actually had a chance to talk to Tarun the other day. Why don't we play that clip? We are standing outside of Coffee Down Under, a new coffee shop that's opening up in the heart of downtown Detroit. What's the idea behind the concept?
Coffee Down Under is an Australian-inspired coffee bar that just happens to be downstairs, so it's a little bit of a cheeky pun with the name. And we are a primarily grab-and-go coffee bar. We've got a little bit of small seating, which will open up when the COVID restrictions allow us to. But for now, it's really a program that's espresso-focused, but we've got all types of coffee drinks. We work with an Australian roaster who's an award-winning roaster with coffees from all over the world. And we also have a really great tea program that's also with an Australian purveyor. Really just trying to do something a little bit different, focusing on the ratio of espresso and milk in our different drinks, and bring some new flavors to your morning coffee.
So obviously there's a pandemic going on. Why now?
I think the short answer is that we feel like people are interested in what we have to offer and we can do it safely right now. The reality is, because it's a grab-and-go concept, we're able to serve people without having to require indoor seating. And frankly, we've been working on this for a really long time, and we want to make sure that our team is employed. We want to make sure that we can get our product out on the market and live to see better days in a way.
And so, before I let you go, what's the magic of the Australian take?
Well, you might just have to come in and see for yourself. We actually have a drink on the menu called the Magic. It's a 6-ounce pour with a shot of ristretto and finished with a bit of milk and milk foam. Really, it's just about attention to detail, I think, and it's a bit about the cultural elements of coffee. We focus on having a broad range of offerings and really paying attention to the details of how much milk is in your drink, what are the ratios, and kind of honing in on what flavor profile you like and getting that down moving forward. So I think it's a great place to kind of experiment with your palate and figure out what works best for you.
So, Devin, after visiting it myself, I thought it was pretty nice. I liked the concept. It was kind of cool and hidden away. Socially distant, which was nice. I'm a big fan, as we've talked about before, of these coffee windows. This isn't a coffee window, but it's that kind of smaller retail footprint that I think does well in this kind of economy.
Yeah, it's very cool, very reminiscent of a city like New York or Boston and something like that, where you've got these small little coffee shops below a existing business. In this case, it's Brome. So if you see Brome, Coffee Down Under is right beneath that. Really cool concept that Tarun has going. Really good attention to detail, as he mentioned in the clip. That's what's going to make this coffee really different. It's awesome stuff. He's got a lot more planned, so you're going to see a lot more from him. I don't want to tease too much, but he's also got a speakeasy concept that's going to be launching, hopefully, as part of that as well in the near future.
Got a little bit of a sneak peek. It's not quite ready yet, but it is cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of this. Well, I know a lot of folks want us to talk about the suburbs, and I've got a couple of stories about going about town in the suburbs. First off, I want to talk about quickly, I know, Devin, we weren't going to mention this originally, but One-Eyed Betty's in Ferndale is temporarily closing for renovations. They did a post on Facebook that was kind of unfortunate around talking about how they're closing, and they weren't very clear with it. I know it was kind of like a social media strategy or whatever, but the internet's very literal, and I think it's important that you're pretty clear about what you do. They're going to be adding a shipping container style patio, which is pretty interesting. And I feel like if you're going to do renovations and you've got the budget for doing renovations, this is the time to do it. And if people don't know, One-Eyed Betty's is just south of 9 Mile, just west of Woodward in downtown Ferndale.
Yeah, Jared, good point. I especially agree on kind of the way they went about it. It was a little controversial, I guess. All attention is good attention sometimes in business, if you subscribe to that theory. But they had a Facebook post that seemed to indicate that they were closing for good, which, you don't want to joke around or mess around with, because that's happening, unfortunately, all the time.
Especially in the middle of a pandemic where you've got people actually losing their jobs and losing their livelihoods right now. Just bad timing on the stage.
That announcement could be very literal, and plenty of places are having to make that unfortunate announcement. So One-Eyed Betty's actually had good news, and maybe that's how they should have framed it, because it's very positive that they're staying open, they're renovating, and they're getting a shipping container. All
right, this last story, it's your kind of neck of the woods, if you will. There is now a park space outside of the old Dearborn City Hall. First off, before we get into this, let's talk about that old City Hall and its importance, because it's one of Metro Detroit's more historic buildings.
It's interesting growing up in Dearborn. Dearborn history and Detroit history are essentially just interlinked, obviously. It goes without saying, but people are sometimes underestimate how much they're linked. And so Springwells Village, which was an original village where Henry Ford was born, in the mid-20s was renamed to Fortson Township after Henry Ford and his son Etzel. And then in the late 20s, that merged with the township of Dearborn, hence the city of Dearborn. And that city hall was built in the early 20s actually as the city hall for Springwells Township.
Okay. Well, it's a really cool looking space. The city hall is now farther, I want to say west down Michigan Avenue. It's in a more modern building. But now it's an art space in that building? It
was a really interesting and really cool thing they did a few years back, where the city found some office space right on Southfield and Michigan Avenue, kind of more centrally located geographically in Dearborn, and went into a more modern office space. They gave up their historic city hall, but it didn't just go into abandonment. They actually sold it to Art Space, which is a national organization that creates these living and working spaces for artists. And so it's been taken over by artists. There's beautiful works in there you can walk through. They also live there. So it's a very cool space. And like you said, and like you mentioned, there's also a lot of green space and a lot of park space on the grounds of the old city hall.
So what's happening is the Dearborn Downtown Development Authorities are hosting a virtual public input meeting on January 27th to give community members a chance to provide their ideas to redesign this city hall park. There are a lot of events that happen with it. That part of Dearborn, and also West Dearborn as well, there's definitely some walkability in there, and it's becoming an option for a lot of folks that, maybe the city isn't the right fit for them, but they want to live in an area where they can still walk to things, have services, that kind of stuff. And we're really seeing a resurgence in those more urban areas of Dearborn.
I'm biased, but at the same time, that East Dearborn area, if you're in East Dearborn right there, we're talking about Michigan and Schaefer, where the old city hall is, you're actually closer to Detroit than some places of Detroit. And so it's really interesting if people find themselves being priced out of some of the new stuff in Detroit, there's options over there in Dearborn. And as you mentioned, it's a confluence of all different types of transportation. You have a bike share program in that vicinity. You have major bus stops for the smart buses and the fast buses in that location. Heck, you even have a train station not too far away with the Amtrak. And so you really find yourself at a confluence of transportation there. And, the roads flow back to Detroit. And so it's very easy to live a life where, you can, pretty easily on different modes of transportation go back and forth between Detroit and Dearborn, which is really cool.
Well, and Devin, I think I share for everybody here, make sure to email me, Jer@Daily Detroit, if you've got something happening in your suburb. We get asked all the time to cover more inner ring suburbs because, frankly, that's where a lot of people live. A lot of people live in the city, but way more people live in the suburbs right now. And so they want to know about what's happening throughout the region. So if you've got tips, if you've got ideas, shoot me an email, jer@dailydetroit.com. Well, Devin, we made it through another episode of the podcast.
Enjoyable as always, Jer. Thanks for having me on.
It's always great to have you. Listen, folks, if you haven't already, become a member at patreon.com/dailydetroit and keep this podcast going. It is greatly appreciated. Or if that's not your style, think about leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. It's right there, Daily Detroit. I'll put a link in the show notes. Well, that's it for today. I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devin O'Reilly.
Take care of each other, and I'll see you around Detroit.